Hey, everybody, welcome in. Welcome in. It's the first Guerilla Sports Off Ice pod of 2026. Hope you all had a great, happy, safe New Year's celebration. I'm Jesse Montano. I'm going to be joined by Meghan Angley here in just a few moments. And while, yes, we will talk a little bit about the shellacking the Avs put on the St. Louis Blues on New Year's Eve, we are mostly going to be getting into Olympic rosters as most nations have unveiled their full rosters, and there are a lot of Avs going, but also a couple that maybe should have been going who aren't. We're going to talk about all of it. As always, want to start by reminding you guys about our great new friends over at Furniture Row. Head on in right now for their New Year's super sale, 5-day sale to kick off the new year. And when you buy more, you save more at Furniture Row. Head on into any of their Front Range locations, shop that 5-day New Year super sale. Furniture Row, buy more, save more. Also want to tell you guys about our great friends over at RefiJet. And did you guys know you could kick off your new year by refinancing your auto loan? With RefiJet, you could save around $150 every single month, all which is a soft credit pull and zero hassle. It's lower payments, flexible terms, maybe even some cash back in your pocket from your car's equity. And who couldn't use some cash back in your pocket right now after the holidays? So head on over refijet.com/sports. You guys hear me say it all the time. The best way to support us and what we're doing here at Guerilla Sports is by showing some love to our partners. refijet.com/sports. Head on over, see if they can't help you out, save you some money in this new year. It is the faster, easier way to refinance. Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Hey, everybody, welcome in. Good afternoon, Guerilla Sports Off Ice. I'm Jesse Montano. This is Meghan Angley, Friday afternoon edition. And Meghan, it's the end of the 2-week holiday run here, where, for us working in sports, every day, I don't really know what day it is, what day of the week it is, any of that. But this is the one time a year where kind of corporate America gets on our same scheduling a bit, and no one knows what day it is, if they have to work today. Is it a full day? Is it a half day? Today kind of marks the end of that 2-week run where there's not as much traffic. The stores are a little bit lighter. How has this holiday week been for you?
It's been okay. I do appreciate less traffic on the roads. It was easy to get down for practice yesterday.
Yep.
And it was a fun one. I was surprised a little bit that they were practicing on New Year's Day, but it seemed to be a lot of fun for them. And I think it speaks a little to that record they have right now with just 2 regulation losses. At this point in the season, we're getting closer and closer to the official halfway point, and things are going pretty well for the Colorado Avalanche.
Things are going pretty well. I asked Jared yesterday if there's been any conversation about or any thought given to, hey, we've seen teams in the past have historic regular seasons where they put up, gaudy numbers, pick up a lot of wins, and then it just doesn't quite work out in the playoffs. I asked him if that's something that they've been talking about, and he said it's in the back of his mind. It's not something that's needing to be addressed quite yet, but you are correct, Meghan. Going pretty well at about the halfway point. 2 regulation losses heading into the new year. Not bad for the Colorado Avalanche. Do you have a New Year's resolution to share with everybody? No,
they're personal.
Okay. I love it. I love it. I'm trying to make the bed. I'm trying to build a making the bed habit. That's one of my resolutions. And I'm going to try to not give myself a hard time if I forget on a day or stuff like that, but I want to have that habit built by the end of the year.
I think that's a really good one.
Thank you. I agree. Meghan, my goodness, the Avs looked like they were in a hurry to get to their New Year's Eve plans a couple nights ago. 4 goals, really 5 goals in the first 5 minutes. One of them obviously gets called back for goaltender interference. And then I was dying laughing at the way that both teams there were not a lot of whistles in that third period. Everyone wanted to get done with that game. Wow. I don't necessarily know if you can call that a statement for the Avs. They all downplayed it, felt a little bit like they were making a statement on behalf of their goaltenders, given who they were playing. We'll get into that in a minute. One of the more impressive games that we've probably seen from the Avs this season, and that's saying something.
Yeah, I think excitingly, obviously a huge Nathan MacKinnon game. Scores his 400th and 401st career goal, but a huge night from Val Nichushkin. And so it's unsurprising to see Nathan MacKinnon have a night like that. The trajectory he's been on this year, though, it is as if another level has been unlocked for MacKinnon. Nichushkin, though, kind of this really steady and sneaky point per game pace that he's been on this last stretch since returning from injury has been the impactful Val Nichushkin that we're used to talking about. And it's great to see him get up to form too, because I think it all loops back together to that second line conversation. A lot of what I'm loving about Brock Nelson's game right now, I think, is in part Val Nichushkin's also rising to the occasion. And so even with some switching in the top 6 that we've seen throughout this point, a guy like Brock Nelson, I think, has found some consistency, and Val Nichushkin is getting back to those things that make him, as Mackenzie Blackwood called him, a horse on the ice every night. So I was glad to see Val Nichushkin have such a big night against the Blues. But you're absolutely right. Such a strong start. But I think that they did things throughout the rest of that game to stay in it and try and support Mackenzie Blackwood as much as possible. I do think that's part of, they were coy about it. I do think it's part of an overall statement, though, around at least their thoughts in throwing their full backing and support behind their goalies. I think that matters.
So I don't know if everyone's heard it, and we can maybe play it here in a little bit, but like I asked Nate about it, and I tried to ask in a way that wasn't putting him in a position to talk shit on either Hockey Canada or his goalies. And he Nate said to me, he's like, I don't know what you want me to say. But like I asked him about it obviously they picked who they picked, and I'm sure those are fine selections. We're going to talk about those selections here in a second. But just like, did you think that your guys had a case? And, he was pretty passionate. He was like, yeah, of course I want my goalies there. Like, I think they're great, and I think they've had great years, and I think they deserve to be there, but it is what it is. So yeah, I'm with you. Like you said, they were coy about it. They downplayed it. I don't think you're going to get any of them to come out and say, yeah, it was, but that definitely seemed like they were motivated to hang a few on Jordan Binnington. And then I just have to call out, because I can't remember which it may have actually been Brock Nelson. Was talking about it a week or two ago, saying that like when Ball Arena like gets loud and gets going like that the players really do like that energizes them, that they kind of feed off that. And that was something that watching that first 5 minutes, I felt like as the Avs play on the ice ticked up, the energy in the building ticked up, and it just kind of led to this like overwhelming sense of urgency. And Megan, like I was really kind of, as much as we watch this group and we know what they're capable of, I was almost a little taken back by the fact that the Blues looked rattled by the way that game started. Like they just looked like holy smokes, we were not expecting this. They looked stunned a bit there to start that game.
The things I noticed in the Blues body language that concern me for them as a team is a lack of energy around defending their net front. And so there would be a lot of chaos in the crease, and usually, between whistles, you see guys giving each other some shoves if they're taking a couple extra whacks at the pads. I didn't see that in this at least opening period from St. Louis. And so to me, that's a stunned, kind of paralyzed in place reaction to. It's not that they don't care about their goalie and they're not trying to step up for him. I just think they were genuinely paralyzed in place because of how shocking that start was and just not having an answer for it. But in those moments, that's where I do want to see, no matter who your team is, right? I think it points to the health of a team when you do have guys getting a little passionate, when you're coming at the goalie, right or wrong too. That's kind of what you need to see from your players. And I think that's what I needed to see from St. Louis, and I didn't, and it surprised me.
You're almost kind of waiting for that penalty where like a team gets overly aggressive and a guy finishes a check he shouldn't or something. And like you said, there just wasn't, like, there was just none of that. And like Binnington eventually settled in a little bit to that game. And truthfully, I'm thinking of like the 2-on-1, or maybe it was like a 3-on-1 that cross ice to Kale, who shot it short side, and Binnington made a really nice glove save to keep it from being 5-0. And I mean, like, honestly, had he not made that save, like, I don't know if there would have been anything that the Blues would have done that would have stopped the bleeding. Just relative to your point of like, they were pretty lifeless there while the Avs were, kind of rolling downhill to start the game.
Yeah, it felt like there was this divide between the skaters thinking to themselves, what do you want us to do differently in this situation? And also maybe looking to the goaltender, right, wrong, make a save.
Yeah, get us one here.
Right.
Holy smokes.
There's only so much we can do, but also I think they could have been doing more is where I'm going with that.
I don't disagree with that at all. I don't disagree with that at all, especially given what you just kind of laid out. I think there was plenty that St. Louis could have done. But I actually think, Megan, the other thing, I was just looking at watching that game, the way the Avs were playing, and the fact that it was, every line was doing it. And I said, this is also a little bit of when this version of this Avs team gets rolling, there isn't much you can do.
Well, and that's why I think they're looking to Binnington like, what else did you want us to do? You're seeing this too.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Yeah, and honestly, like that Valnichishkin goal that opens up the scoring, it is a minute in. And so there just wasn't much hope for the St. Louis Blues at the start of this game. And so that's what makes the goaltending conversation interesting too, is Mackenzie Blackwood wasn't tested that much. There were 20 additional attempts blocked through just 2 periods of play. It wasn't as if the Avs, got up 5-0 and stopped playing hockey.
Right.
They were still blocking shots late into the game. It wasn't perfect play. There were aspects of their game that were a little looser than normal, but I kind of enjoyed the way in which they also just seemed to be having fun.
Well, and I loved, when we talked to Jared Bednar yesterday, he liked the fact that they responded well to jumping out to a big lead. And he said, we talked about it in the room, playing with a lead like this. It's New Year's Eve. Everyone wants to get out of there. I'm sure a bunch of those guys had plans. The building's going crazy. Like, remain in control, stay mature, continue to execute on your details. And that was maybe, Megan, the part that I found the most impressive about that game was exactly what you just said. The Avs kept blocking shots, getting in lanes, back checking. I think back to what game was it where it was they're up 5-0 and Sam Malinsky's forechecking our guys,
San Jose.
Was it San Jose? Like, again, like I thought that St. Louis game was another game kind of like that. And then on Mackenzie Blackwood, and maybe this is where we can start the transition of the conversation. I was talking with my dad yesterday, and we were talking about Binnington at one end and, the Avs goaltenders on the other, Doug Armstrong and all that stuff. And my dad made the point of, said, well, it wasn't even just the goals that the Avs were scoring and, lighten up Binnington. They said Mackenzie Blackwood quietly had an excellent night in net. Not a lot of pucks on net, not a ton of pressure, but he made I'd say somewhere between 2 and 4 really nice 10-bell highlight reel saves.
Yeah. So I think in the first period specifically, there were 2 high danger chances. And why it's significant in my eyes is I think every goaltender probably has a different perspective on this, but I imagine for some it can be hard to stay engaged in games when you're not seeing consistent regular traffic. And so I think staying ready for the moment, even though the Avs were doing a lot to minimize chances, and then St. Louis did come into that game a little bit later and started to make a bit of a push. All that to say, I think for Mackenzie Blackwood to stay ready for the moment when it did come in a game like that says a lot about him as a goaltender that should carry a lot more weight than it does.
I completely agree. And for him, again, he won't say it explicitly, but you heard his post-game comments of like, I'll speak for me and Wedgie. We both thought we should. That night definitely meant something to him to put on a good performance like that for Mackenzie.
Oh, absolutely. I wonder if he even wanted to see a little bit more action, but he certainly earned the win, even if he didn't face as much in the shots battle. You look at 2 big penalty kills in that second period, and I think that penalty kill unit is just a separate conversation, just how good that they've been. I forget what game it was recently, too, where there was a penalty kill. I think it might be this one. Yes, Devon Taves had a shot. St. Louis didn't even get a single attempt. It was an Avs penalty kill where the only shot attempt on net was from the Avs. It was the St. Louis game. So they deserve a lot of credit too, but I think having a good PK starts with feeling trust in your goaltender too. And that record, number 1 PK in the league, starts with goaltending first and foremost, and then the unit has followed suit.
Anything else on that game, or should we transition using that game as a transition?
Yeah, because I think that big performance from Nathan MacKinnon, obviously Team Canada, that's easy to discuss. Brock Nelson gets that power play a little bit back on track in this St. Louis game after it was pretty scary against LA. So I'll come to his defense when we get to that point, but there's a few things, even just from the last 2 games, that Brock Nelson has done well. That is why he's been nominated to Team USA.
Yep. Well, let's start with Canada and the goalies, because I think this is I don't necessarily know if most controversial topic in Avalanche land with Olympics and stuff like that. But this was definitely something that I think even on a national stage, got some conversation. Because look, you can feel however you want to feel. You can like certain goalies, not like certain goalies. You can appreciate what Jordan Binnington did at 4 Nations last year. Whatever. All of that stuff can be true. What's also true is the Avs have 2 of the best goaltenders in the National Hockey League for the last calendar year. They are both Canadian, and neither of them make the cut. It's Jordan Binnington, it's Logan Thompson, it's Darcy Kuemper. I guess just we talked about it. I believe that was on Monday about who we thought could be there. I believe you and I pretty much both said we thought one of the Avs goalies would go. Are you surprised that it was Logan Thompson and Darcy Kuemper joining Jordan Binnington, who I think we all knew?
I'm surprised they finally overcame whatever interpersonal issues must have existed with Logan Thompson.
Yep.
And I think if I'm building a team that I want to win, that is the goaltender I'd want on my team. But I'm not sure if he's getting the start for Team Canada or not. So I'll reserve full judgment until I see who's starting game 1 for Team Canada. I threw some backing and support behind Darcy Kuemper, and it's because I think there's different philosophies around how these teams get constructed. And honestly, I'll sound as if I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, because when we talk about aspects of Team USA, I don't necessarily think this was applied, but I think experience is something that carries a lot of weight in selecting goaltending, and playoff experience, that body of work factored into this. I think Wedgwood and Blackwood comparatively have less playoff experience, and especially as starters. So that made sense then that Darcy Kuemper won a cup with the Avs and experienced adversity along the way, and a great regular season that year as well, followed by these have been 2 good, just solid seasons in net for Darcy Kuemper. Didn't surprise me. Binnington's the surprise. Look, I'm not going to bury the lead there.
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny because I was talking to someone yesterday, and the irony in the fact that neither Avs goaltender gets there because Darcy Kuemper won a Stanley Cup with the Avs.
Right.
There's and I think that's the other thing too for Avs fans as a consolation prize. All right, it's not one of your goaltenders, but it's Darcy Kuemper, who is beloved by Avs fans, who won a Stanley Cup with them very recently. And was excellent in that cup clinching game. made a couple really big saves late to secure the 2-1 win in that game. So yeah, like you said, a little bit of irony there in the goaltender.
Because, like just drawing parallels back to that season, they were able to win the West in part because of amazing goaltending that they got in the regular season from Darcy Kuemper. And it's like the Avs are on an even better track right now with Mackenzie, Blackwood, and Wedgwood in that.
But like you said, let's just, and look, we don't have to spend a ton of time on it. It is definitely the his dad's the coach kind of thing. Doug Armstrong wasn't going to leave his guy off the roster after Binnington went, and like, look, also you just have to be fully honest with it. Blues fans cannot like what I'm about to say. It's fact. It's reality of what happened. He was excellent in the third period and overtime of the Four Nations gold medal game. He was excellent. They were in overtime and in that position because he gave up some softies earlier in that game. And truthfully, Megan was not great throughout the tournament. Like, Jordan Binnington was okay at absolute best. He just dialed it up for about 30 minutes, and he chose the right 30 minutes to do it. And that earned him an Olympic roster spot. His numbers since then have not only not been good, they've been atrocious. Doug Armstrong tried to do the whole, well, hey, look, his numbers haven't been good this year because we haven't had a good enough team. Someone tell that to Joel Hofer, whose numbers are fine and very different from how Jordan Binnington's look, whether they be just the standard numbers, goals against, save percentage, things like that, or once you start digging into expected goals against and high danger percentages and things like that. The team in St. Louis being terrible hasn't had this crazy effect on Hofer the same way it has Binnington. If you're going purely based off of merit and numbers, Jordan Binnington should not be on this team. But again, he earned his spot there with a really good game about a year ago playing for Team Canada.
Well, and I think the Stanley Cup to his name
7 years ago, but yes,
adds to that conversation. But look, like, we're talking about experience, and a cup in your resume made a difference with the goaltending decisions. So, that's not me playing devil's advocate. Why would I advocate for the devil? Jordan Binnington.
His thing is he's a gamer. He elevates at the exact moment you need him to. And again, you're 100% right. He's got a Stanley Cup that says that he can do that. And then despite his struggles in that game and in the tournament, when Canada needed the biggest saves the most, like, he did deliver on them.
He's such an interesting goaltender. I don't know. I find his emotional processing, like, sometimes to his detriment, but I will say, given the Avs game just recently, he could have called himself out of it. You know what I mean? Like, just counted himself out of it. And he stayed in it. So I'll give him some credit for that. But I'm just not sure culturally, like, what kind of impact this could have on Team Canada. A goaltender like that.
And like, you just wonder, because again, like, I really do, like, I think there's an element of this, and like, I'm not trying to take anything away from Jordan Binnington with this, but like, Armstrong wasn't going to leave him off the team. He wasn't. He just wasn't going to do it. He was going to make sure that his guy was there. He knows him. He knows him the best. He's won for him before. He won for him at four. Like, he wasn't going to leave his guy off the team. It did not matter how Jordan Binnington was playing or what he was doing. Now, for Armstrong, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle it. Jordan Binnington played every game in the Four Nations tournament. Played every game. Aiden Hill, Sam Montembeault never even got a minute. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle this. I think it's pretty safe to say, I think if you're going through all of this to get Jordan Binnington there, you're probably going to play him in that first game. But what happens from there? Is Jordan Binnington this we're gonna live and die by what Jordan Binnington does because the Blues GM is running Hockey Canada right now, so we all just have to do what they do and live and die by how well Jordan Binnington plays? Or if he gives up some softies, are they going to go to the experienced guy, Darcy Kuemper? Are they going to go to the guy who's had an excellent last year in Logan Thompson? And it's just going to be interesting to see. Doug Armstrong got his guy there. Now, how much does he, force the coaching staff's hand that that's the guy you need to go with?
Yeah. I think the fact that Logan Thompson is there suggests that there might be a door that is cracked open, because I think that required some concessions to begin with. So hopefully there's more flexibility for Team Canada in that than I've given them credit for previously.
For Team Canada, any other thoughts, any other surprises on roster, guys who are there, guys who aren't?
Scheifele. And it's not like, oh, he's, I'm not going to necessarily say he is snubbed. I think it was a hard roster to come together, but I think he will eventually lend himself to the conversation we have around Team USA, because I think what Scheifele represents in his leadership, the kind of the character ad, cultural ad, made so much sense for what I thought teams valued in building these rosters. So he's an interesting one to leave off.
Mm-hmm.
But I am not looking at Canada's choices in forwards and thinking to myself, any of those guys don't deserve to be there either. But I think when we get to the Team USA conversation, it is kind of an interesting part of it is these are hard rosters to build. And there is the weight of, you do have to value experience a little bit. And there are kind of the intangibles of the game, right? What do they bring in critical moments? Maybe when the team is down, what kind of a voice of reason do they have, right? Anyways, he's kind of I could see a guy like that helping Team Canada, but that is the only name I'm thinking of right now.
You know who is mine?
Who?
Anthony Cirelli.
Oh, stop. I'm such an Anthony Cirelli lover.
Right.
Yes. But you know what? It's fair.
I just, and again, like and like you said, we're going to make this argument in a minute the other way. But like this was just another one to me. It's not that Anthony Cirelli is not a really good player. And he was at Four Nations. I look at it and this feels a little bit like, again, oh, his dad's the coach. John Cooper's the coach. And again, it's not even necessarily a full criticism, because when you're building these rosters, and you're going to hear me say this again in a minute, you have to build a full hockey team. You can't just grab who are the best, biggest superstars. You got to have penalty killers. You got to have grinders. You got to have guys that are willing to block shots. You got to have guys that are willing to, battle along the wall. I just thought, given a couple of the players that were left off, Anthony Cirelli was a little bit of a weird pick, given that it's him and Brandon Hagel.
Yeah. For me with Cirelli, it's an easy sell because he's in the Selke conversation for the strength of his two-way play. You just shouted out, the importance of specialty players too on these teams. And he's also won a Stanley Cup. So I think that two Stanley Cups. Two Stanley Cups. So two-time Stanley Cup champion Anthony Cirelli. I don't know.
Like I said, I don't think that it's not that I think Anthony Cirelli isn't a really good player. And you also have to consider, like, Jonathan Cooper knows what he's going to do with that guy. Like, John Cooper knows how he's going to deploy a guy like Anthony Cirelli and what he can get out of him. So, like, again, the Herb Brooks line from Miracle, not looking for the best players, I'm looking for the right ones. I think you're going to have some of that. I actually do have one other one for Edmonton. Canada. Travis Sanheim.
Okay.
Again, just I thought there may be a couple other guys in the mix that could have ended up there. But again, was at Four Nations, was at World Championships. Like, they value guys that have gone and played in tournaments with Canada before. They value familiarity.
Yeah. So just curious, who are some of the other defensemen? or one other defenseman that you kind of had.
Hold on, let me pull up the.
No worries. Now I'm just curious because the other I was thinking about that I don't have issue with, but I think was sort of the fringe guy in some people's eyes was Tom Wilson. But I think in understanding the reasons that he has frustrated me as a player, not so much in his current game. I don't have issues with his current game, but he towed that line in an annoying way earlier in his career. And I can understand why Canada would want that represented. Because honestly, when I think about Four Nations, it's not the end all be all for how this Olympic roster comes together, but I think there's stuff you can glean from that, right? And I found that the identity of Team USA had to be different from what Team Canada is going to be able to put together. I think Canada is going to lead with its skill, and it's going to be hard to contain, whereas I think USA is going to try to counter that with a little bit of that sandpaper grit energy, alongside skilled players as well. But I think that's where Tom Wilson then could really help to go toe-to-toe with what some of USA, I think, intends to bring JT Miller. Like, I think that's a big reason that a guy like that's on Team USA.
Well, and I think I also think there's a little bit of that from Canada's side that's intentional of like trying to, because if you remember the last time NHLers were at the Olympics, the US really kind of, took it in the teeth after the fact because it was really obvious they built a team that was like, we're gonna outgrind Canada. We're just gonna make their lives miserable. And Canada's team was just so sick that like it didn't matter. And so like I almost wonder if there's a little bit of this of like, all right, fine. Get in your head a little bit, Oh, we got Tom Wilson out here. What are you going to do? And so there was one name I was pulling up a couple of the lists just to make sure that I thought maybe they'd go Schaefer over Sanheim.
Oh, that would have been fun. And I think he rightfully rose in those conversations quickly. Like Celebrini has a year lead on him in terms of being able to show at the NHL level, but the fact that he has shown so well in his rookie season, so young, is exciting for what he's going to be in the next Olympic cycle, which is easy. He's so young. Totally. It's easy to imagine.
Totally. And I thought maybe it would have been one of those, you bring him, maybe he doesn't even play, maybe he's the 8th D the whole time, but like get him around those guys, like kind of having Hockey Canada use this as like, all right, we're getting Matthew Schaefer into the program. We're getting him into all of this. And then, hey, if things go sideways, you can plug him in. But he was the one that I thought would maybe be there over Sanheim. And then, Sam Bennett was another guy. I
was about to ask about him because as I was talking about Scheifele earlier, you're like, well, he's got Stanley Cup experience. He was an impact player for Florida these last playoffs. He brings kind of a nasty element in his game that in the regular season, I don't think it has the same pop and shine as it does in the playoffs. I think Bennett's game is built for playoff hockey, built for a stage then like this. However, from a discipline standpoint, could be a liability too. If the way this gets officiated is careful, I should say. Anyways, kind of talking about Tom Wilson feels similarly than about Sam Bennett. It probably was a similar decision-making process between the two.
I imagine it was one or the other.
But I am curious then, because we were just talking, both have Stanley Cup experience, so not trying to take away from either, but apparently how recently they won a cup matters to you, Jesse. I have no real issue with this, but I just see what Sam Bennett did for Florida these last playoffs. I'm like, I don't understand why you didn't want a little more of that. Totally. But
and the only reason I say that about Jordan Binnington's cup being 7 years ago is I often talk about Cam Ward, longtime goaltender for the Carolina Hurricanes, went on an unbelievable run. I believe it was his rookie year, maybe his sophomore season, to win a Stanley Cup with the Carolina Hurricanes in 2008. Unbelievable run. And that dude turned in like a 15-year NHL career on the back of that one run. Like he really struggled the rest of his career. But he was, it's Cam Ward. He's got a Stanley Cup. What a run he had in 2008. And I just think Jordan Binnington has lived off that same type of thing where it was a ridiculous run in, 2018? He's been average to below average since. But, hey, he's a gamer, man. He won that Stanley Cup, and it just drives me nuts that he gets away with that. Let's talk about Team USA. I'm just going to run through it here. Matt Boldy, Kyle Connor, Jack Eichel, Jake Gensel, Jack Hughes, Clayton Keller. Happy for him.
Same.
Dylan Larkin, Austin Matthews, JT Miller, Brock Nelson, Tage Thompson. Happy for him. Brady Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk, Vincent Trocheck. On D, you got Brock Faber, Noah Hannafin, Quinn Hughes, Seth Jones, Charlie McAvoy, Jake Sanderson, Jacob Slavin, Zach Werenski. And then they took the same 3 in net as they took to Four Nations: Connor Hellebuck, Jake Ottinger, Jeremy Swayman. Let's start off the top by talking about Brock Nelson here. Anybody who has watched Brock Nelson play this year knows extremely well deserved, should absolutely be there. If you haven't watched Brock Nelson this year, I get why people would maybe look at that and look at some of the guys who are left off. Brock Nelson, Vincent Trocheck, I don't know, maybe a guy like JT Miller. But again, like I said, if anybody, if you have eyes and a brain and you've watched Brock Nelson for more than one game this year, you understand why he's on this roster. We talked about it with Canada. You need guys. You can't just put together the best 20 guys with the highest point totals and say that's going to work. You need guys to play roles. You need guys to kill penalties. And you need guys to be strong all 200 feet. You mentioned Anthony Cirelli, that being a calling card of his game. We're still at the halfway point. I'm not sure where it'll all land. I would not at all, the way things have gone right now, be surprised to see Brock Nelson get some Selke votes come the end of the year.
Yeah, and I think this is what stresses me out. I didn't realize I felt this way about Brock Nelson until today. Now, you'll recall on earlier pods this year, I've been defensive of his strong two-way play and how, though his production hadn't gotten to where we'd like to see it, about 20 games into the season, he's still doing a lot of the right things defensively, and we shouldn't lose sight of that, right? All of that's still true, but I think his body of work here, it feels like we're talking about him but he's got this great personality. And he actually is so much more than just the great personality too. He is a multi-time 30-goal scorer who I think, past that 20-game point has gotten right back on that track.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to skew the numbers a little bit. If you're just looking at NHL.com right now, you see 30 points, 39 games. I think he'll get to that point per game pace here very soon. He'll kind of make up the difference from that opening 18-game stretch for him where things were a little bit quiet. And the context of that is so important.
Mm-hmm.
He was plucked from the only team he'd ever known in the middle of spring of last year. And there are going to be some growing pains that come with that. It's also been about finding the right talent around him, finding some chemistry. It's taken some time for him to build that. And so I think that's what you're seeing at the start of this year, because he's been reliable defensively through this point. Let's not sleep on the fact that it's a number 1 ranked penalty kill. He's among the top ranked PK forwards, not just on the Avs, but that's significant, right? In terms of minutes, Vanatushkin's eating up big minutes too. Brock Nelson, he's eating up those big minutes. He's got one of the best D-zone face-off percentages, shorthanded face-off percentages, and it's led to a lot of their success on the kill specifically. I think he's so much more too than just winning faceoffs. But look, we're going to get into the conversation around Jason Robertson in a little bit too. I think he was snubbed from this roster, but Brock Nelson is not the reason he was snubbed from this roster. Brock Nelson rightfully belongs in this conversation, and I think he deserves a lot more respect on his name for his body of work through this point. Not only captain his team, a top line guy taking on top line matchups through this point, he was leaned on as being that guy. When you play for the Colorado Avalanche, you're going to have a piece of the pie in terms of being among the points getters. But when you play with Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, Marty Netchus, it's just a piece of that pie. You have those other teammates to support in contributing offensively. Brock Nelson's starting to really raise his game, I think, late October, then late November. It's just continued to level up offensively. The defensive side of the puck is so good. He's 6'4". I think people see the grays in his hair and they think that he's older than 34, but he's playing on the fastest team in the league at altitude, 6'4". He's got this long reach. He gets sticks in lanes. It doesn't always, show up as a blocked attempt because he's taking away pass opportunities. And he's so good at reading the ice in that way in his own end that it has led to some of the offensive plays that we've seen from him. And let's also not forget that one of the best teams in the league has had a weird power play to start this year. And whenever it's gotten a little bit back on track, it's been Brock Nelson at the center of it. When they have put him on the wall, he didn't have success there last year, but it's been part of the solution for the Avs power play this year. So the other thing I want to draw attention to is he touches every aspect of the game. He's not just a good penalty killer. You put him on the power play, you put him on a second line, because Nathan MacKinnon's your top line center. On a different team, he'd still be a first line center, is where I'm going with this. Having a guy who is so multidimensional like that and is still playing some of his best hockey is such a no-brainer in my eyes. He just, look, we'll get to Jason Robertson. I think he was snubbed, but put some respect on Brock Nelson.
So 32 Thoughts had Elliot Friedman, Kyle Bukauskas. They had Dave Amber, also from Sportsnet, join him this week. And Dave Amber kind of stumped for Brock Nelson because they were doing their roster predictions before everything came out. And Dave Amber, I believe it was Dave, kind of stumped for Brock Nelson. And it was along the similar lines to, if you remember a couple weeks ago, Rick Bonus was on the TNT panel and someone was talking about how underrated Artturi Lehkonen is. And Bonus waited till I got done and he said, well, just so you guys know, Artturi Lehkonen is not underrated in like NHL coaching circles. We know exactly what that guy does and how valuable he is. And that was a little bit of how Amber talked about Brock Nelson, of like, NHL guys love Brock Nelson because of so much of what you just talked about. He's big, he's long, he can score. He's a great 200-foot player. He's smart. He reads the ice well. He's great in the dot. Like he's this excellent, just well-rounded player that, and again, Dave Amber was kind of making the point of like, I don't think this guy's spot is in jeopardy. Like I think people are like have him as a bubble guy. I don't think he's a bubble guy. Like I think Team USA really values what Brock Nelson does and the offensive abilities he has. There's a comment that came through that said, well, if Brock Nelson isn't the reason Jason Robertson got snubbed, who is? Like, let me put it this way. I don't think Brock Nelson's going to be a healthy scratch the whole tournament. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he was the 14th guy taken.
Right.
Like, I think Team USA is taking Brock Nelson with the intention of playing him every night maybe not every night. Maybe he gets a night off here or there. I think Brock Nelson is going to be in the lineup. I think he's going to be an important part of what Team USA is doing. And if you're talking about guys who kept other guys from getting on the roster, you're talking about the guys who made that last spot here and there. And I just don't think Brock Nelson was the last name added to Team USA. I expect him to play a key role for them.
Yeah, like we've talked a bit off air about some of those names, and I'm not here to disparage others in the name of elevating Brock Nelson. The guy, though, that I'll say on air is Vinny Trocheck is the guy that I'm struggling a little bit to rationalize here. The other thing that's tough for Jason Robertson in this conversation, because we're looking at the weight of experience, right? Like 56, I believe it is, playoff games for Jason Robertson, 56 playoff games for Vinny Trocheck. When we're starting to have that playoff experience conversation, because I think that's the only knock on Jason Robertson is, I think because he's so young, we haven't really seen the best he's capable of in the playoffs yet so far. But early in his career, there was concern around how he could kind of disappear a little bit in the playoffs. He's a winger and he doesn't really penalty kill. So I think he's good defensively more than he gets credit for. But in this same breath, I think those same people aren't watching just how good defensively Brock Nelson is. That's why he's leaned on as a top PK forward.
Do you remember a couple weeks ago, and I can't fully remember what the conversation was, but I brought up the fact that in Kirill Kaprizov's first couple of years in the league, they got into the playoffs and he kind of got swallowed up and he looked a little overwhelmed by the physicality, how hard guys played him, how everybody finished their check, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, there's another player that's like that too, who I think kind of gets eaten up by the moment a little bit. And for me, Megan, it's Jason Robertson. I just don't think, again, I think he's still a good player. I think he finds ways to be effective. But like, there's a reason the last 3 years, the Dallas Stars have run out of steam and run out of offense in the playoffs. Their guys, they do. Again, this isn't my opinion. This is what's actually happened. Their guys like Jason Robertson, Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, Wyatt Johnston, like they struggle to have the offense translate from the regular season to the playoffs. Again, that's not me talking shit. That is what's happened the last few years.
Well, and so this is where it gets weird, right? This is where it sounds like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth, because you're like, well, what's Clayton Keller's playoff experience, right?
Right.
And I think this is where Worlds plays a huge part in the decision-making, because Tage Thompson and Clayton Keller were excellent in Worlds. So it's just like, they've got this very recent body of work on an international stage where they were impact players, and I love it. I'm so glad that those guys are going to be on this team. I think that they can make a huge difference. But that's obviously assigning a little bit weight to something different from like playoff NHL experience.
Right. Well, and where I was going to go is I think you're spot on with that with Robertson, of like, that is a little bit of who he is. Again, that's just who he's been, right? Like the offense will kind of dry up a bit in the playoffs because it feels like he struggles with the intensity, the up physicality, et cetera, et cetera. But I also do wonder here, Megan, if there's a little bit of the Logan Thompson-esque thing where because like I've seen a lot of reports, I've listened to stuff the last few days, Megan, it has sounded like Jason Robertson wasn't ever really in like that serious of consideration for this team.
It is weird to me, because not only his body of work right now in this regular season, he is on an insane track.
24 goals already.
He's been so good other seasons in the regular part of the year. And I just didn't want to say season like a fifth time. So he's so good. I just don't fully understand some of the other, because like JT Miller's kind of the other one, but I think that he had an impact in Four Nations, not necessarily on the offensive side of the puck, but just like in that edge category that I think they valued. So, and then he has the experience, like maturity of a player and handling big moments. He's an emotional guy. So like, I think he's received criticism at times for how he's handled the big moments in games. But I think it can be a rallying cry for his teammates as well. And so I was like, okay, those are those intangible things that I was talking about, like with Scheifele, how I think that deserves some credit too, that I think they value with JT Miller. I'm sure that's true of Vinny Trocheck too. It's just somewhere the weight of just the pure skill of Jason Robertson, I feel like should have carried more weight than it did in this conversation.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I found it interesting when those reports were starting to circulate of like, yeah, Jason Robertson's there, but I don't really think they're looking at him like that. That told you that they were looking for something else other than goal scoring, playmaking, which he's clearly, one of the best in the league at. Something tells me that there's probably a layer there that we don't know. And I also do want to point out as we go through all of this, like if there's an injury, like I actually just saw yesterday, Vinny Trocheck is out 6 weeks. I think it's Trocheck out 6 weeks. I don't know. That might get too close depending on how that rehab's going, where they go and tap their next alternate, and maybe it's Jason Robertson and he ends up there anyways. I don't know, but it is interesting that clearly there is something about Robertson's game that just did not mesh with what Team USA was looking to put together here.
And that's for like the organizing part of my brain, because it's not like there's one tool of measure being used here, right? We're talking about character, but also PK impact, and just 5v5 defense, but also production. I still think when all the chips are down, Jason Robertson's skill did not carry enough weight. I know I just said that. I just want to emphasize it because you look at the skill offensively opposite them in Team Canada, just for example, because there's still other countries that have really good teams here. I think that they really could have used the skill of Robertson offensively to counter some of that.
I almost wonder if the reason you end up with a guy like no Jason Robertson is if you sit there and if you're Team USA and you say, okay, who are we taking? No doubt. who are our no doubt guys that are coming back from Four Nations? And again, I don't necessarily know. Maybe that list right there is 9 names long, 10 names long. And then you say, okay, so there's our no doubters coming back from Four Nations. Okay, who are our guys that went to world championships this year that we have to have here because they were just so good for us and we see the fit? Okay, maybe that's 3 or 4 more guys. So maybe it's one of those things where you start getting into the conversation of like, all right, well, the role that we'd plug Jason Robertson into, we've already got that represented a couple of times with guys that we're bringing back. So we're really looking at this much smaller portion of the roster that's 5 names long, and we need to make sure we've got a penalty killer. We need to make sure we've got a net front guy. We need to make sure and again, I mean, that's kind of the only rationale for me of how you arrive at this place that doesn't include a guy like Jason Robertson on a team that, yeah, he should be on. Hey, we've already got most of this done. Now we're trying to fit some specifics into these last few spots.
Yeah, I'll be interested because, these are superstar teams. So it's like line by line, a fourth line in the Olympics going to look a little different from a fourth line in the NHL. That's also true. You still need your role players because there are going to be penalties to be killed.
Right.
That's where guys like Brock Nelson, who impact every aspect of the game at a high level, matter a lot.
Yeah. I want to talk about one other Team USA.
Okay.
Not necessarily snub, but I actually think, it might be underscoring the downfall of Adam Fox. I mean, this is a guy that we are not very far removed from being a Norris Trophy winner, and a guy that a lot of people had in the conversation in the tier with Cale Makar, and there was a short-lived debate from some East Coast fans of like, oh, is he better than Makar? Adam Fox, not even on Team USA's Olympic roster, and he did struggle at Four Nations last year.
Yeah, I know I've seen like the specific defense on the McDavid goal shouted out, and I imagine it is bigger than just that singular moment.
Yeah.
But perhaps punctuated by it. It is really tough. I think that rightfully the conversations I recall so vividly of like Makar versus Adam Fox, those existed for a reason because these were the 2 up and coming talents in the league to take seriously. Defense, on D. And it is a little bit shocking, that fall from grace. But I like, it's like, is this where the Seth Jones cup recency
I think so.
Factors into it? I won't go down that rabbit hole, but yeah.
Before we move on, let's hit this super chat here because I do think it was timely to it. Oh, got those new super chat lights. We heard enough about the people didn't like him as the green, the Dallas Star lights, so we got him changed up. Shout out to Mark and John.
Yes.
Got those new lights going.
No more green.
Yes, no more green.
That looks really good, actually.
Does look
I
really
wish we
nice.
could do the whole show like this.
Let's just do the rest of the show. I love it. Bedard had the ultimate international body of work and success to Megan's point.
World Juniors and some Worlds?
Well, he didn't go to Worlds.
No Worlds, okay.
And again, that was like Celebrini made it.
Because of Worlds, he was so good.
And that was especially on the heels of Bedard not having a great year last year, Celebrini having a really good year. Then suddenly Celebrini's out there riding shotgun next to McKinnon and Crosby.
Earning the endorsement
of those players. And, I do wonder if there's a little bit of that there where Bedard's sitting there going, well, fuck, I wish my agent would have really encouraged me to go.
I think his injury this season has also played a part in it. It's Celebrini being a competitor, impact player, kind of, playing with a lot of power in his game in Worlds, earning then the endorsement of his teammates who are able to see that up close and personal, getting to play alongside him. And then also he's continuing to do that this year.
He's been outstanding this year.
I think Bedard has leveled up his game in an impressive way, but the injury just didn't allow him to continue to build on top of that narrative.
And then I don't want to blow it out of portion a bit here, because again, like Celebrini obviously hasn't won anything, but like I do still just worry a little bit that, like, we've talked about Bedard in the past of like, is he a little too small for the way he wants to play, tries to play? Guys are really physical. Guys lean on him. He's had a few injuries already to this point in his career. Like, was that just a little bit of like and we just don't know how he handles these moments when, stuff really dials up and guys really start to lean on you. We don't know how Connor Bedard handles that stuff, as where Macklin Celebrini, like you said, kind of plays bigger, meaner, more assertive than.
Yeah, I like assertive.
Bedard.
I think too, Bedard's trajectory has been off to a shaky start that I think it's sort of it's shadowed over how good of a player I think he can really be in this league. I think there's been pressure and mental challenges his first year in the league, and then of course getting saddled with some injury now this year has been challenging. So I still think he's going to be a guy that's in Olympic conversations in the future. But to me, it makes sense why Celebrini over Bedard.
Yeah,
for right now.
Completely agree. All right, let's move on to Finland here. Gonna run through the whole roster. Megan, it's so funny. Like, I remember growing up, the Finland and Sweden teams were always made up of mostly NHL guys, but then you'd have a line or two, a couple of D pairings that were made up of guys from the Liga, guys from the SHL. And it's just crazy to see how far these nations have come. I mean, they're putting together teams that are basically fully made up of NHL players. For the Finns, you got Sebastian Aho from the Hurricanes, Joel Armia, Mikkel Granlund, Eric Halla, Rupe Hintz, Capo Kakko, Oliver Kapanen, Joel Kiviranta, Arturi Lehkonen, Anton Lundell, Eetu Lesterainen, Mikko Rantanen, Teuvo Teravainen, Eli Tolvanen. And on defense, you got Miro Heiskanen, Henry Jokiharju, Esa Lindell, Oli Mata, Nicholas Mentimpalo, Nico Mikkola, Rasmus Ristolainen, and from the Liga, Mikko Lehtonen. In net, you got Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, Kevin Lankinen, and UC Saros. Pretty cool team for Mikko Lehtonen to be a part of.
Wow. Yeah.
Good for you, old Kiviranta. I tried to give us more credit than you will allow me to on Twitter, because we did mention that Arturi Lehkonen, Joel Kiviranta had an outside shot at maybe being 13th, 14th forward, but we did say probably not. That's probably an uphill climb for him, but good for Kivy. Gets there, and then I imagine that Arturi Lehkonen, he's one of those guys that I think is going to play a much bigger role for that team than a lot of folks realize right now.
Yeah, I just, the reason too, I don't want to draw back to that conversation is I just feel bad that we counted Kivy out so easily. Not so much that we didn't consider he could be in the conversation. We just didn't really give it much thought.
Yeah.
And so I just feel bad, but there are a lot of injuries for Finland. I mean, obviously starting with Barkov is one of the biggest to impact them. But I think that even like Laine being left off is part of this too. It's opened up opportunity for other players and other needs to be met. So I'm happy for Kiviranta. He's such a steadying presence. There's a reason Jared Bednar has so much trust in him that I think that he'll hold it down. And he's a player who obviously PK specialist, and he tries to find ways to do things in limited minutes, to include, you'll always be surprised by his hits per 60 at the end of the year. I don't think of him instantly as this hulking physical presence on the ice, but he doesn't shy away from staying engaged on the forecheck. I think in part because he recognizes, right? Like he plays limited minutes on the Colorado Avalanche. So he has to find a way to impact the game in his own way. And so I'm excited for him to bring that for Team Finland.
Lehkonen, I always love watching the Finns play in best on best tournaments. I think there's a way that Finland plays, and I think there's like a school of hockey that they all subscribe to, that makes for really fun, really hardworking hockey. And they are always, I think, a dark horse team to knock off. Like they are one of the big dogs for sure, but like I think they are always a sneaky team to knock off Team USA, Canada, because they just do the right things. And I think Artturi Lehkonen, I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of fun watching Lecky at the Olympics. I think he just embodies that Finnish style of hockey that is going to be so fun. Here's again, it's not a snub. It's highlighting, and he's injured right now, but it's highlighting the downfall of Jesperi Kotkaniemi.
I am kind of surprised.
Man. And again, like he's hurt right now. 2 goals, 6 points in 24 games this season. And like I said, Megan, it's just not even a thought. Not even like a second thought about this dude.
Yeah.
Former 3rd overall pick. Has had a couple years where he's been okay. 33 points last year, but yeah, Kotkaniemi not heading to the Olympics. Probably a guy that most would have considered a little bit of a lock, a year ago.
Yeah, well, and seeing how much I think these teams like to have extra center depth, I think it's surprising to me.
Yep.
But I like their back end. I think that, Esselindell and Heiskanen from Dallas, like there's a reason why that team frustrates me, is I think that they have a lot of strength, starting with Heiskanen. I think he's such a good player.
So good.
And I like Nico Mikkola as well from Florida. So I think that'll be an intriguing aspect of Finland's team that could maybe sneak up on teams. I mean, at this point, since these guys play against each other and with each other on NHL rosters, there shouldn't be too many surprises. But I'm excited to see too how someone like Mikko Rantanen, who I think in Four Nations didn't quite have the pop in dazzle, that just after everything that has happened in this last year, I imagine there's just a spotlight there on a guy like that to perform in this Olympic tournament.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And he was kind of in between. Is he staying in Carolina? Is he going to free agency? Is he going to get flipped again? He just got, blindsided by a trade like at Four Nations last year. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see him. All right. Rounding out today's show, we're going to talk about Sweden. Team Sweden also announces their roster today. We already knew Gabe Landeskog was going, but who will be joining him from the NHL is Jesper Bratt, Leo Carlsson, which I love to see, Joel Eriksson Ek, Philip Forsberg, Pontus Holmberg, Adrian Kempe, Gabe Landeskog, Elias Lindholm, William Nylander, Elias Pettersson, Ricard Raquel, Lucas Raymond, Alexander Wenberg, Mika Zibanejad. On the back end, you got Rasmus Andersson, Philip Broberg, Jonas Brodin, Rasmus Dahlin, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Gustav Forsling, Victor Hedman, Eric Carlson, and in net, both Minnesota goaltenders, Philip Gustafsson and Jesper Wallstedt, and then Jacob Markstrom. What I saw someone tweeted it this morning, so this is definitely not my original thought. What a redemptive arc for OEL. Gets bought out from the Vancouver Canucks. Looks like his career is maybe over. Since that buyout, he's won a Stanley Cup and is now heading to the Olympics for Sweden.
Yeah, I think it's understanding role, like in the same way that players like Andrew Cogliano started in this league as one type of player and then finished a very different. I think that OEL's just had to embrace sort of at this stage in this career, the type of defenseman that he is. It's going to be maybe more second, third pair type minutes, and being leaned on heavily for things like a penalty kill and just needing to be trusted in his own end. And so I think he's embraced that in a pretty solid way. And it's why he's found some success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, truly, Megan, like I wouldn't be surprised if any of the 4 teams we've talked about today have a really good tournament. But this Sweden team is just like they are They're sneaky good. They're sneaky deep. And if you get, the right combination, like I think this is a team that can really make some noise. I like this team a lot.
I think that the redemption arc for Gabriel Landeskog is just so huge. Like he was not even in Olympic conversations a year ago, feels fair to say. And obviously the comeback in the playoffs this last year was an exciting rush of emotion. And then, he got named to the Swedish roster early on, but we just didn't know what he was going to look like in the regular season. And not only has he not missed a game, he's emerged as a guy you can't keep out of your top six. He's just too important to what they're trying to do there.
I have to also call out the fact that because all of these nations named, what was it, the initial 6 or 8?
I don't remember what it was.
They
it was
named
6.
They named a handful of players early on. And I thought it was significant that immediately after Gabe Landeskog makes his return to the ice, like you said, we knew the excitement and how awesome it was of him getting back. We didn't know how it was going to hold up. And I thought it was significant that immediately Sweden puts him on the roster. I think that says so much about A, the kind of player and person that Gabe Landeskog is, and B, the amount of respect that he commands in hockey circles everywhere.
Yeah, it's the kind of guy you need to have on your team if you want to win. And see, that's for like the weight of the 2022 Cup. It's so much bigger than just the Cup. Like, just everyone understands what Gabriel Landeskog is. Even if you're not his teammate, players who play opposite him respect him so much as well for a big reason. It's the character. It just shines through in every facet of his game and off.
You can't look at what the Avs are doing this year and not draw the parallel to, well, what's the one big difference from last year? Gabe Landeskog's here.
I think, this was a point I was trying to drive home after the St. Louis game, but it was huge from Nichushkin, McKinnon, but also Gabriel Landeskog. Like, he's not necessarily showing up in the score sheet in a big way, but he's a big reason why this game unfolds the way that it does. And it's just the little things that he does. Jared Bednar talked about it in the postgame through the neutral zone to change the course of the game. And he also is such a steadying presence too. And the way that he embodies leadership and keeps the ship on track. That's not the expression.
Sure it is.
He's the captain for a reason.
Train on the water, boat on a track.
Train on the water, ship on the track.
Man, it is crazy, Megan. You open up just the stats page for NHL.com. Top 2 goaltenders in goals against average. Kenzie Blackwood, Scott Wedgwood. Maybe that's how we end it, and we just bookmark the conversation or bookend the conversation by saying, boy, oh boy, it feels like one of those two guys should be there.
Well, so isn't this what's tough, right? Like, we're talking about Jason Robertson's numbers, and I think everybody's recognizing the regular season success and why it's not just exclusive to this year for Robertson. So I know that's part of it too. It's just a lot of Binnington's justification is based on things he's done in the past. And I'm not even really meaning Four Nations. I feel like Four Nations was kind of a net neutral. Because to your point, it's like, yeah, he made some big saves late in that game, but it didn't have to be
right.
late in that game.
If it was a classic
saves came early.
Shooting in. Why did they do this? That was Jordan Binnington's, Four Nations. Yeah.
So anyways, it's frustrating that at every different point in this conversation, different things were the reason. We're like, well, I think they did this because of his numbers. Well, actually, it's because of something he did in the past. Well, actually, it's something like Clayton Keller did in Worlds this summer. And so that's where I said, none of it makes total sense. You have to approach this conversation with nuance. And all said and done, I still think you missed the mark a little bit with goaltending, at least by one goaltender.
So let's leave it with this. Something Scott Wedgwood told us yesterday. If you're trying to make the Olympics as a track and field athlete, you have to be the fastest runner that year. If you're the fastest runner that year, you make the team. Doesn't matter if you were the fastest runner 5 years ago. I think the fastest runner should make the team.
I don't know if I agree with that.
I'm just saying that was what Scott said yesterday.
I bet he also was like, Megan, there's more nuance than that. And he'd be right. So
there you go. We're still waiting for the full Czechia roster. We know Marty Netris is on it. And then again, unfortunately for the athletes, for a guy like Val, Russia is not going. We are not going to get into all that. I'm not going to get into the geopolitical conversation as to why Russia is or is not there. But I believe the Avs will end up with, is it 8 now? 3 on Canada, 2 on Finland, Sweden, 7. So it would have been 8 had one of the goalies gone.
Wow.
So 7 players total. We're still waiting on that Czechia roster. Anything else for today, Megan?
I'm so happy for Joel Kiviranta. He gets to go play in the Olympics.
Well, so honestly, and I'll use this from like had Scott Wedgwood gotten to go as the third, right? Let's say he would have gone as the third. Even if he didn't play, what an awesome experience to have for a few weeks to get to be there, be an Olympian, be part of it. And that's where I'm at with Kivy. Even if he doesn't play, that's awesome that he got recognized as one of the best 20 players from that country. And I hope he gets in some games and gets to shine a little bit, killing penalties, and just doing the things that he does really well for the Avs.
Yeah.
That's going to do it. She's Megan. I'm Jesse. We got John back there behind the glass today. And we're going to head into the weekend of the first weekend of the new year, get some R&R. The Avs are out on the road. We'll have content coming your guys' way no matter what. But that's going to do it for today. Megan, Jesse, John, have a great weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Happy New Year.